Hi there, everyone. I'm sitting here with my Gryphon, made by Velliette in Woodstock, New York, here in the United States. And I thought today we'd talk about 12-string guitars. Now, I've shown this instrument before, but we really didn't talk that much about, well, how do you play it? How do you approach it? I think when it comes to 12-string guitars, you can't always play them like you do a 6-string because, well, they have 12 strings. So they're a little more different to play, and in some cases a little more difficult or harder to play. They take a little more strength because it's twice the strings. So let's talk about the approach. What's some tips to playing a 12-string so that your playing is successful and enjoyable for you and the listener. So let's just get started with that. So this particular guitar, it's a 12-string, but it's tuned an octave higher than all the instruments, an octave higher than a standard instrument, and a step down. So it's actually tuned D to D, but an octave higher, okay? And so if I put my capo on the 2nd fret, I'm now an octave higher from a standard instrument. Okay, so that's how this guitar is set up. Now, a regular 12-string guitar, if you look at the first 2 strings, string set 1 and string set 2, they're actually the same strings. They're duplicated. But when you get to set 3, 4, 5, and 6, you'll notice that one string's skinnier than the other. It's because they have made the strings an octave higher to the standard string. Does that make sense? So it's different than the first 2 sets. They have octaves. They have 2 strings, but they're an octave to each other. Okay, so that's why they have that sound. That's why they're different. Now you'll notice when you go to approach them and play them, you have twice the strings. So a lot of people complain that they're just too hard to play. Well, sometimes they're too hard to play. Could be because you're not used to them. Could be your fingertips aren't broken into guitar playing yet, so you need to have a little more calluses. Could be you don't have strength in your fingers. That's true, but a lot of times it's not what the problem is. The problem is that the instrument's set up wrong. It needs to be set up so that the string is close enough to the fingerboard that when you press it down, it doesn't take as much work to move to the fret and make the tone. Now you don't want they call that action. You don't want that to be so low that your strings buzz, but you do want it to be low enough that you're not doing a whole lot of work when you play. Okay, so that's one thing, is take your instrument, get it set up by someone so that it's max, it's at its best, okay, so that you can play your best. The second thing I want to bring up, besides setting your instrument up right, is when you pick a pick, get the right pick. I think it's probably good to start with a lighter pick, not the lightest pick, but a lighter pick. I don't like the light picks, the super light picks, for any instrument because they make too much sound. You can hear nothing but click, 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 click. But I have to say, for a beginner that's trying to learn to strum, a light pick, even those click, 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 click sounding picks might be good, because they can start it will flex for them and give them a lot of room for their learning their strumming. But for the most part, though, I just discourage super, super light ones. And right now, I'm using a light pick. Now, this, granted, is a different kind of pick. So it's, even though it says it's a 0.5, which would be considered super light, it doesn't feel that way to me because it's carbon fiber. These are made by Guitar Mousse, and they have a couple different types of materials they use. I always order the one that has the carbon fiber material, and I've ordered the 0.5s, and when you get them you realize they have a little bit of flex, but they're not flexing so much that you hear the click. And I like that. Now I have to say the tips wear on them, and these are a little bit expensive, so you know, I can't say they wear faster than other picks, but they do wear, and you end up tossing them and start a fresh one. But they're well worth it. I like these picks. I don't represent the company. I'm not doing a commercial for them. I just like their picks. Just like I like all the different things that I share with you. Anyway, so back to the pick. So get yourself a lighter pick to approach the 12-string guitar. Get one that you're comfortable with. Now there might be somebody that comes along and says, no, don't get a light one, you know, get a blue chip, a heavy one that has the edges that are hand carved and what have you, and you'll be able to, you know, speed dive your instrument. And it may be true for some, but if you're just starting out especially, I would definitely would go with a lighter pick. And I've been playing for a while now, and I like these picks, so it works for me. So it's whatever works for you, but I suggest a lighter pick. So get it set up, get yourself a lighter pick. The other thing is that you've got to build strength in your fingers, so you got to practice. And the more you practice, the easier it's going to get. Because even with a great setup, there's still twice the work. You have twice the strings, okay? But it's well worth it. Okay, so then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which I think is most important, is when you do pick the instrument, how do you go about it? Do you go ahead and strum all the strings of the chord? I mean, you can do that. But you notice it's super, super loud. And if you're playing with other people, you're probably going to overwhelm all the other players. So that's one thing I've always thought about, even with a regular 6-string, is listening to the people you're trying to play with, and trying to blend rather than play over them. I mean, there's a place, if you're playing lead or whatever, that you might elevate above the rhythm. So true, but you know, but still, you need to listen, and you need to know when that happens. And I think it's called preferring one another, allowing other people to be heard. I haven't been attending, I haven't had time, but we have a really wonderful jam session here in this area, and the people that run it, I appreciate them so much, and I love their approach, because they make room for everybody at every level. To me, that's just awesome. And not only that, they're very vocal about making sure that people don't play over one another. And if somebody has the lead, allowing them to be heard. It's a good lesson for everyone to learn that, and it's a message that's I think important. And it's one thing that I just appreciate about that jam, is that they make room for everybody at every level. And it's awesome, it really is. So anyways, enough of that. So I think the best way to approach the strings is to focus in certain areas of the strings. That's one way. And then the other way is to play 1 or 2 notes at a time. Like an arpeggio, or even just that, you're playing 1 or 2 notes at a time. I just played 4 strings right there, and 2 sets actually, and you know, it's plenty of sound, and it sounds great. And when I'm playing with the pick, so usually when I focus, when I say to focus, I'll focus on maybe 3 sets at a time. Where I think you really, works well is on the center of the strings in here. So you notice I started in the center, I went to the low string, then I ended with the high strings, but I didn't play them all. Does that make sense? So, so that's another thing. It just takes a little practice. And so when you start out, you know, lay down your chord. In this case, it's the C chord. So focus in areas of your instrument when you're playing, and don't try to play all the strings at once. Let your strings take turns, okay? Something we learned in the sandbox, gotta take turns. I had a comment that somebody wrote that I reminded him of Mr. Rogers, and it's like, I'm not quite sure how that came about, but it made me laugh. I mean, I laughed out loud. But I guess when I say things like that, you got to take turn. I guess that's Mr. Rogers stuff. It truly is. So I accept that. But if you haven't learned to take turns, please do so, especially when it comes to music. You know, make room for one another. And when you're playing your guitar, make the strings take turns. Don't play them all at once when it comes to a 12 string. You know, center yourself. Start in the center maybe, and then move to the edge strings, or play 1 or 2 strings at a time. Okay? So anyways, that's my tip of the day for 12 string, and I hope it's helpful to you, and I hope you have a great evening wherever you are in this world.